Hi there, Romans here and welcome to another music review. I review every album from a viewpoint of a musician, as I'm a singer, songwriter and a bass player for my own group Jakobe, and last year we have released our debut album called Pursuits in Life. What makes it unique is that it's a pretty heavy prog rock without guitars. Instead you have drums, bass, saxophone and keyboards. You can check out two of our music videos on my YouTube channel. We're building our own monument and Fake the New Kind of Beauty, and also a studio live take of A Way to Oppose. In the description of all videos you will find all the information about where is the record available. It's available on all digital platforms like Spotify, Tidal, Deezer, iTunes, Amazon, Bandcamp, but also in this Digipack version with a very beautifully illustrated 20 pages long booklet. So in case you want one, all you need to do is contact me through an email, on Facebook, on Instagram or through Bandcamp. And today I'm going to talk about a new album from Thank You Scientist called Terraformer.
Music review. Music review.
Thank You Scientist is a prog band that I've been aware of for quite some time. I think it was either Jolly or some other prog band that shared some of their music on Facebook, and it was really very interesting, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna check this band out, but you know, there's just so much music around it, I never really got around to actually sit down and listen to their music. And something like 8 or 9 days ago they released their third album, Terraformer, and as of now I've heard it 8 times, so let's go right into the review. Before I even start, I really like this album, I really dig this record, but I have to start with some criticism first. If you watch my reviews, if you watch my videos, you know that I'm generally not a big fan of very long records, meaning that if I'm about to get into some album that is more than an hour long, it makes me a little discouraged to actually go deep with that record because there's just so much music there. And this album is actually an hour and 24 minutes long. When I saw it for the first time I was like, oh, I don't want to listen to it. And actually I thought that this was a double album because 84 minutes of music is more than you can put on a compact disc, which is limited with 80 minutes. So I was trying to check on the internet whether this is a double album, but it's actually not, so it's longer than some of the double albums I've listened to before. I don't mean like there's any music I would like to get rid of or some fillers, it's just, it's too long, you know, and the sheer amount of music presented here kind of makes you forget about what happened at the beginning. There are many memorable moments here, but by the time you get to the final tracks of the album, you will have problems remembering what happened in the first tracks as you have heard them such a long time ago. This applies for like first 4 or 5 listenings of the album. What makes this band stand out is the instrumentation, because apart from the predictable core of the band like drums, bass, guitars and vocals, we also have a violin, trumpet and a saxophone, which makes for a pretty unique combination. And I also like the sonic minimalism on the album, meaning that I don't really think the individual musicians use any pedal effects or special pedals, and if they do, just some basic ones. It's just the actual sounds of the instruments that really make this record stand out and are enough to make it very fresh. I also like that this music is not necessarily dominated by any of these instruments, and they all work for the music. And if they do, however, take over occasionally, it's to make a very memorable moment. Musically, this is kind of like a prog rock slash experimental rock slash jazz fusion, but there are many overlaps to the other genres. When I was listening to the record for the first couple of times, I actually thought that some parts reminded me of ska or reggae, but when I was focusing on this record more, I couldn't really pinpoint those parts, but you may have the same feelings. But usually there are some other influences I'm going to talk about. Final thing I'm going to mention is the singer's voice. It will take some getting used to. At first when I heard this record I thought this was a side project of the singer from Coheed and Cambria, but it's not. The singer has a very specific voice, so it may take a few listenings to really get used to it. As there is such a huge amount of music presented on this disc, I will try to be as brief and informative as possible. Because of the length of the album, many tracks seem to have that running time of like 8 to 9 minutes, and these are long, epic prog tracks with many time changes and a lot of different various parts. Probably the best example and the most representative song of the album is the first single, FXMLDR, whatever that stands for. It's like a prog rock / alternative rock song. I really love the horn section. Verses are a bit in a Haken style. It's got a very catchy chorus and there's a beautiful jazzy saxophone solo. There are also some heavier tracks, for example Get On Emo, which is like a melodic alternative rock / prog rock track. I really like the melody there, which is very kind of epic, mysterious. And probably the heaviest track on the album is the final and the title track of the album, Terraformer, which is almost like an alternative metal track. With this song they sound like the most traditional prog metal band because horns, meaning saxophone, trumpet, they enter only like halfway through the song. So up until that moment we have a pretty traditional prog metal track. I really love the guitar work, I really love guitar riffs. The songs that make this record really shine, in my opinion, are those where those overlaps to the other genres are very audible. For example, Son of a Serpent, it seems to be combining jazz and Latino of the 70s with more contemporary prog. And I really like those last 30 seconds of the song where we hear those anthemic chorus, and they make for a very memorable yet pretty unpredictable part. Life of Vermin starts in a very funky, jazzy way, and all the parts like this on the album remind me of Stevie Wonder, Jaco Pastorius or Tribal Tech. You will also realize that they kind of have their own way how they write melodies. I guess it's the singer who writes the melodies, but most of the songs have that specific way how they progress the melody, how they write it. So I also like the metal riffs with horns, like in this track. And there are some, as I mentioned, some Latino parts, and I think the only other band that combined progressive metal with Latino that I can think of is Norwegian prog metal band called Ark, and they released only 2 albums, but I really love both of them, so I was really happy to hear something like that here. For example, in this song we also have an acoustic flamenco part.
Easy wine tonight, the spirit's still left inside.
And a beautiful trumpet solo. What's not to like? The song that stands out the most is Bird Watching, which is slower, more mellow and much shorter than the rest of the album. And there are actually some electronic elements here which may sound a bit out of place here because they haven't used it anywhere else, but I really like it. There are also a few instrumentals. I think the intro Wrinkle really gives a great impression of the album, like the feel for the instruments, but the big instrumental here is called Chromology. There are a lot of solos. I especially like the part where we have like the battle between the saxophone and the trumpet. then there's a guitar solo, also a violin solo. I think that violin is probably the most blended instrument on this album, meaning that I was able to hear it distinctively only a handful of times on this album. For example, in the track Anchor.
More of the same. Stop closing open doors.
And there are parts that reminded me of Band Knee, who also have a violin player. To sum up, I really dig this album. This actually may end up on my top 15 list of this year because it's a really fantastic record. As I've mentioned, it's a bit too long, and I would personally, if you are like me and you don't really like records that are too long, I would recommend listening to it in like 2 parts. Try to divide the album into 2 equally long parts and always focus on one at a time, and in that way it will be easier for you to remember. This record also requires some patience from the listener, but believe me, you are going to be rewarded with a very unique album. Did you like my review? You can let me know in the comment section below if you agreed or disagreed with me. If you are a fan of Thank You Scientist, you can let me know how much do you think the new album compares to their other stuff, which one should I go to next, or which one do you think is the best one. You can follow me on Facebook or on Instagram. You can find links to both in the description of this video below. If you like this review, don't forget to like, to share, to subscribe, to check out my own original music, my live performances, my worst to best series, and quite a lot of other reviews as well. Thanks a lot for watching.